Like, these are all
Mm.
good things to have in your life, but they shouldn't be the focus of it, right? Like, especially relationships, they should be complementing an already meaningful life. They shouldn't be the focus of it. Because now we're putting all our happiness into something that could fail, right? And that's
Oh yeah.
also something out of our control. And that's very,
Yeah.
very dangerous.
Uh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why would? Damn. I'm really just really, what do you call that? I'm
Mind
really
blown?
stunned by, yeah, mind blown by all this. Like I've made decisions, shaped my decisions to be. I've done the opposite. I've put all my eggs into something that could fail, and then it fails, and then now I'm fucked.
Yeah,
I've done that a lot. That's why I'm
absolutely.
reacting like
No, it's
this.
I mean, it happens to everyone. Like, it's not really something to be ashamed of because it's just part of us learning these things. And usually, I mean, people don't even get to know all these different things and actually think about it in this way. They never really take
Mm.
that step back because then they just start looking for the next thing. At least we actually know the name of the game now,
Yeah.
you know?
Now I see. Okay.
If I had to give you only one thing to really highlight the value of the show, it's going to be this. What you're about to listen to is a call with my cousins from the Philippines, Red and Kyle, that probably ended up being the best crash course I could have given on the things that make our lives meaningful and happy. After incorporating a lot of these things into my own life personally, I practically 180'd with all the improvements I saw in my emotional, mental, social, and even spiritual well being. They absolutely changed my life, and so I hope that you're able to get some kind of value today. So, enough of the intro, let's just jump right in. Enjoy it. So, last time we talked, it was about internal work. We talked a bit about the existence of God and pretty much how we can incorporate all these different things into our lives, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
is there anything that you wanted to go over in particular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were having drinks at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
The last time we talked. So I what I actually want to go through again was I can't recall the term we used for it, but
That's okay.
it's the one with the where you do something nice for people and then you progress and then
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
That's the 4 levels of happiness, and so the one that you're referring to right now is actually called altruism. So that's really great.
altruism.
Mhm. And one really, really great thing that we could start on is actually the 4 levels because it really puts everything
Mm.
into frame in terms of how we should actually try and live our lives. And so, if you wanna start off from the top, level 1 is instant gratification, right? And so, this is typically going to be with respect to hedonism and things like that, not necessarily just drug addicts in particular, but we all have a particular weakness to something, maybe it's smoking, maybe it's drinking, maybe it's sex, etc. But typically what instant gratification is going to do, it's usually physiological, right? It could be even as something as innocent as your favorite meal, but it's only ever a problem when you actually make it the biggest part of your life, right? Like when it occupies too much of your thoughts in the day, then it's like, ooh, maybe you have a problem. Because then you're allowing other aspects of your life to fall short, and maybe you're not maintaining the other areas where you should be maintaining them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
in the graph here for level one, we start off at our baseline. And so we have time on the X, happiness on the Y, and we have a pretty solid progression upwards, right? It's decently steep because whenever we look for instant gratification, usually we're very intentional. And so one instance I could think of where that usually is the case for pretty much everyone is looking for a porn video, right? Like you are in the zone, right?
Mm.
You are not thinking of anything else. Like you are focused, right? You're like you got that flow state. Absolutely. And so when you have that kind of focus, that's why you're able to progress so quickly upwards. and reach your peak in such a short amount of time relative to the other levels. And so here we're grinding our way up. Maybe that's the waiter coming down the aisle with our food. Maybe that's us rolling the joint. Maybe that's us actually finding that video that we want. And then the peak is obviously when we get that hit that we want. And so maybe that's an orgasm. Maybe that's actually getting high, or maybe that's getting your fix from a particular drink or something like that. When we have these, it's usually pretty instantly that we look for the next one, right? And so that's why there's such a steep drop off. It's because whenever we have that high and we instantly aren't in that state anymore, we just automatically look for the next one. And so if you notice, it's not a mistake, but we actually go even below the baseline whenever we actually
Mm.
come down from that high. And that's because then we're not necessarily just in the state of, ooh, maybe I should go grab it, or maybe I should go for it again, but we're actually, or rather, we've just lost it, right? And so we're actually just below the baseline because, like, oh, well, now I got to start over, or you're just thinking about the next one. And chances are it'll take a little longer. And so the slope is a bit less steep because then when we build up a tolerance to it, sort of like when you have a drug tolerance, then it'll take more of a dose to actually get that same effect, right? But nothing will ever be as good as your first one, right? Especially if you do this sort of thing habitually. And so whenever we actually participate in this kind of happiness, you'll notice that the peaks for each high actually get lower, and it takes us a little bit longer to get there. And so overall, that just means that we're declining, and usually that's the case where people become drug addicts. Like that's a very, very easy example to use because then you see people trying to go for really high doses, and it's usually never enough. And that's why their lives take such a steep decline, right? Because then they sell everything trying to get that first hit, even though they physiologically can't anymore. So overall, yeah, your peaks will get lower and lower and steeper, and that's usually where you find those kinds of people on the street, or where depression could very easily set in, or
Mm.
you know you overdose or you kill yourself or something like that. Because I mean, mind you, these are very very extreme examples, but it's only ever a really big problem when you put all your eggs into level one or to level two, three, four, right? Because you could be in all four levels at once, right? Like just because you're pursuing something higher, like level three or four, it doesn't mean you don't actually get any satisfaction from anything else, right? Like I could certainly enjoy a drink. I could certainly enjoy drinking with you guys. It's
Mm.
it's just a matter of how we incorporate these things into our lives, and that's the main difference. And
Awesome.
so, yeah, do you have any questions right now?
Oh, sorry. So it's it's all about discipline. To You have to discipline yourself, condition yourself to not fall into the level one, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And so, to bring it into sort of, well, I guess the one thing that came to mind for me personally when you said that is that a lot of people think that religion sort of is a kind of slavery because you have to abide by a set of rules, right? Very generally.
Yeah.
But when the church or various religions talk about bondage and they give you all these like little rules so that you don't do various things, it's
Mm.
actually to give you that freedom, right? Because think about it, if we were just untethered, I mean, I don't know if you guys are religious at all, like, but let's just do a little thought experiment here. Is that
Okay.
if we have no real guidelines as to how to live, what are we immediately going to default to, right? Like chances are
Yeah.
we're going to default to whatever's immediate and apparent, right? Which to us would be drugs, sex, money, alcohol, etc. Right? And so when
Yeah.
we actually partake in whatever vice you could call it that we like the most, that's really all we're going to do at any given opportunity, right? And so that
See.
way,
Yeah.
when we have a moral guideline to live by, at least there's the choice of not going down that route. So we don't actually have to do that, because if we have no guideline, then that's all we do. And then we become slaves to that particular vice. Right? And that's why it's called the slavery of sin, or whatever, or bondage, or whatever. Right? Buddhism calls it uh, bondage through attachment. Right? That's
Mm,
why the monks, they just shed all attachment to everything, like food, and they don't really care about any sort of physical pleasures at all. Right? I mean, for
yeah.
generally just monks in
That's
general.
sad.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you actually live by a certain code or something like that, that's not the slavery, because at least now you have the choice.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
So that's actually a pretty good. I'm gonna take that down. I'm sorry.
No, don't.
Gonna
It's
know
fine.
that.
It'll all be. I mean, this is going to be recorded anyways. It is being recorded, so you'll
All right.
definitely have access to everything. Not a problem. And so,
Well,
yeah. How about you, Red? You good?
Yeah, and just still taking everything.
Hmm.
It's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Well, if you have anything to say, anything to add, any racist
Yeah.
remarks or something, yeah, feel free.
Yeah.
So if we're done with level one, level two is ego gratification. So this one it's marginally better in that now we're actually looking outside of ourselves, right? So now we're not exactly going to be so self-absorbed where now we're thinking, oh, I just want, whatever vice I want at the time, right? And so instead here we incorporate people, but it's sadly not in a very healthy way. And so ego gratification is exactly just that. And so it's the ego where we want to be above others, right? Like our egos are so inflated that we want to be better than everyone else, and we want everyone to know it, right? And so that usually manifests itself in the form of someone maybe one-upping you in social situations, right? Like if you have a story, they got to tell one better. If something bad happened to you, they got to tell you something worse that happened to them. Like all these terrible people, like they're so horrendously inept socially, because all they care about is social validation, right? And so it's sort of a step in the right direction, because we bring in others into the equation, but we do so very, very poorly. And that's also something that we could also be prone to, right? Like, okay, I want to press a girl, I gotta look a certain way, or I gotta act a certain way, and maybe that involves me putting down someone in the group so that I look better, right? Like all these little things, they do happen, and they happen to everyone, but it's only a problem if you do this for your only source of happiness, right? And most
damn.
people
Okay.
most people are usually in levels 1 and 2, because that's immediate and apparent, and that's the
Oh,
problem. And so here, when we go back to the graph, time on the X, happiness on the Y, we have a rather, I wouldn't yeah, it's a very, very lazy, not very steep slope up. And that's because we actually have to build these social connections, right? And
mm,
so here we're trying to build our social connections. We're getting there. We're telling these stories. We're building the connections. We are also incorporating that kind of toxic behavior into our interactions with the group. And that's why we're actually growing, or going up on our happiness scale, right? Because
okay.
as we get more validation, the happier we become. And then when we get to
Mm.
our peak, we don't really acknowledge that the peak is there, because then we don't really know when the decline occurs. Because now that we've incorporated other people, that's not something we can control. And so when you have all this toxic behavior, when you ruin every interaction that you have because you want to be the best at everything, and you put everyone else down, and you want everyone else to love you, that's when people start pushing you away the most, right? Because now no one wants to be around you because you're an asshole, right? And
Yeah.
so when that starts to happen, and when people finally get fed up with you, maybe you get ghosted, Maybe they start making other group chats without you in it. Whatever it is, they shun you if you go, "Oh, hey guys, what you doing?" Then that's when your happiness starts to decline because now your only source of happiness, which is that group, is leaving you,
Mm.
right? And then when it becomes apparent, that's when you actually get to the steep slope down. Because it's usually not very common that people just outright cut off ties, right? Like usually people just ghost each other or they start ignoring and then it slowly fades away. But it's when the realization sets in that we have that steeper decline downwards. And that's level
Yeah.
2. And then when we get below our baseline, that's when we realize, well, shit, now I need to find a new group.
Yeah. I've been there.
It happens. It happens.
It happens to everyone.
I get it. Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. But
Yeah, I
it's
think it's
it's just
pretty common.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when those are the only two things that we default to, it's a real easy trap to fall into, and that's you can't even be blamed for it because at the time you wouldn't have known any better, right? Because everyone else is in the same boat too. Very few people actually realize that there's more, or even start searching, right? Like I didn't know. I this all this info was actually forced upon me. And then I ended up adopting it because I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Like I didn't go out and
Yeah.
seek it.
Mm.
Yeah. And
You
so
just,
it's I actually learned it through a philosophy class, but he didn't follow the curriculum set by the
Mm.
province. He actually taught us, how to actually deal with ideas, how to see if an idea actually makes sense, how to actually live life, not necessarily, oh, Plato lived from this year to this year and believed in this, and then you do that for all the different philosophers. He took an entirely different approach and he taught us exactly the philosophies that we actually need to live. And that is mind blowing when you actually get to the heart of things. Because then you know shit like this,
yeah.
and you're able to actually overcome all these really toxic mindsets that don't really lead you anywhere. Right? Because imagine that we lived our entire lives in levels 1 and 2. That is a really good recipe for disaster in terms of
Yeah.
our own happiness, because then we're in this cycle, right? We're just going from group to group or from high to high. And that's really all there is to our lives at that point, if that's all we focus on, right? So that's a really good recipe for depression or suicide.
Well, I really hope the reason why I've been laughing a lot because of all the topics that you've been mentioning in level 2
Mhm.
is because I encounter a lot of that here. Like I know a
Really?
lot of people that's been living, yeah, in the. I mean, a lot of people in my friend groups actually live in level 2. They're all in
Yeah,
ego
same.
gratification. It's like I don't get it. It's like the meta here in the Philippines. Everyone's in ego gratification.
Do
Mm.
you think
Everyone's
that
trying
could
to
be
win.
sorry, do you think that also could be in part that everyone tries to exude or try and show themselves as someone high class economically? Like
Oh,
that means then you're buying the Gucci shit or the knockoff Gucci stuff, right? And
yeah,
I mean, it happens here in
exactly.
the West too. Absolutely, it does. It's not just a Filipino phenomenon, that's for sure.
It's well, yeah, that happens here as well. The one upping each other with the brands that they buy, but
Hmm.
here everyone's one upping with who works the hardest. Like
Oh,
for
Mm.
oh
example,
God.
yeah, for example, I get to my coworkers' place, and then I complain to them. I rant that I'm so tired. I only got like 4 hours of sleep before I got here, and then the friend's gonna be like, he's gonna say, "Oh, really? That's bad, cause I only had 2 hours of sleep."
Of
And
course,
then
of course.
like nobody asked you. Yeah, everyone's like that here. And now,
Be quick to invalidate what you feel.
yeah, they invalidate what I went through just so they could seem like
Yeah, feel better
they
about
had it
themselves.
worse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
exactly,
They had it.
exactly.
They had it worse than you.
Yeah.
Well, one way we could actually overcome this, before we actually get to any of
Yes,
the other
please.
levels is it's well, perhaps you may just have to have a really decent talk with them. Like in terms of relationships, and this doesn't just apply to romance per se, the four things that we absolutely need for a meaningful connection with someone is trust, loyalty, commitment, and open communication. Right? And that's where open communication really, really shines through. Because as soon as you could actually articulate those sentiments that you just gave me to them in like a decent roundabout way. It's not like, "Hey, asshole." No, no, no. That's not okay. What the fuck? I not exactly like that. But in terms of it's like, okay, but are you trying to invalidate me? Like what motivates you to say something like that just because I said it? And
Mm.
so it
Like
really
that.
just comes down to actually being able to have one of those difficult conversations with someone. And if you actually care about them in your life, then they should be able to hear you out if you actually do bring any sort of concern to them, you know? And
Yeah.
so there was actually one really, really great thing that I saw. If I could just bring it out 1 second, because it's a really, really cool way to actually articulate your thoughts to someone else. And it was just such a healthy way to communicate your concerns with someone. Let me just bring this over. So, for example, I know you're both like in relationships, so this is something actually pretty useful for you. If you could incorporate this, maybe I'm sure you guys are fine communicators, but we could always improve in every other area.
Yeah.
But let's say you have some sort of insecurity or some concern about the relationship, right? Or some concern about their behavior. Maybe you suspect that they're cheating, but you don't really know how to really articulate that in a way where they won't explode, or take it the wrong way or something like that. You can just go, "Oh, hey, babe, there's something that's been bugging me kind of lately, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Would you mind if we just sat down to chat?" And then you could just say from that, it's like, "I've just been reflecting, and I realized that I'd like to learn a bit more about your understanding in terms of, whatever concern it is, right?" And then after
Yeah.
that, you could just say, "Oh, since I kind of feel or I get the impression that," and then you just said whatever you're feeling, right? And so it's it's really a matter of communication in terms of not even romance, but also friendships, also professionally. Everything really comes down to communication. If you can communicate your concerns effectively, oh,
Yeah.
that is a world of difference that you're entering to, you know?
Yeah. Just
I could
really
just
talking to
I could just throw that in chat because I really, really loved that example. And so maybe that might be useful. Useful for you.
it will be. Ooh.
So, we were on oh, okay, altruism now, right?
Yeah,
Unless
that's
do you guys
Mm.
have anything else with ego gratification?
Yeah.
No?
mm, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah,
Mm.
perfect.
Actually just calling. Okay, you just taught me to just call him out, talk
Oh,
about it.
politely, eloquently.
Polite. All right.
Be a bit of a diplomat, yeah. But yeah, call out that asshole for sure. That's essentially what it comes down to, yeah. So now we're hitting level 3, which is altruism. And so here we started our baseline, and you'll notice that there's a lot of little peaks and valleys, right? And so usually when altruism occurs, it's not going to be something immediately pleasurable to us because it's part of a relationship with something, right? And so each little peak and valley is going to be some sort of progress that you're making with respect to this thing. It could be a business, it could be a marriage, it could be just a normal friendship or the example that I used before was actually helping a drug addict, right? And so
Mm.
each little peak and you're actually inclining your way up is when they're making progress, right? Because now you're devoted to something a bit bigger than yourself.
Oh
And
yeah.
so the reason why there are little dips is because usually when you devote yourself to some sort of commitment like that, it's not going to bring any immediate satisfaction, right? Like if you're grinding for a business after each day, you still don't have the reward that you'll have 10 years from now. And you're going to be like, wow, this sucks. I have to keep doing this for X amount of years before I get any traction or the paycheck that I want. Or maybe when you're doing charitable work for someone else, you don't actually get a reward, right? So you just lost time for nothing,
Mm.
essentially, just for someone else's benefit. That's not immediately helpful to you. And that's why there could be very commonly, it happens even to me, especially to me, that sort of moment where you're like, wow, was it really worth it? But I mean, later on, you feel like, oh, okay, well, it was worth it because your relationship improves, right? That's why we have that incline upwards overall, because you're still making progress in whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And so it could be that marriage, that that business, that friendship. But the only time where it's actually really, really dangerous is when we invest too much of our time into one particular thing. And we
Mm.
really have to remember that we are not in control of everything. And that's where anxiety really comes from. Because we could think about, ooh, we could do our best, but they could still cheat. They could still leave you. Your business could still fail. The A second Rona could hit, or maybe a car just drives right through your store. Like things could happen. Or in the example I gave you last time, maybe that drug addict relapses, and so all that progress seemingly goes to waste, and that's where it crashes, right? And so we really just got to remember or take a much more holistic and reasonable approach to things, because we got to realize the only thing that we can control isn't here. We can only ever do our best. And if we've done our best and we've done all we could with respect to any sort of situation, then honestly, it's out of our hands.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because if that's the only thing we can control, that should really be the only thing that we could worry about, right? If you are the perfect partner, you did all you could. You tried to communicate as best you could with your partner and she still cheats. That is not a reflection of you. Even though you will feel like shit, you will want to kill yourself. Absolutely. I completely understand. But that is not a reflection of you, right? Because you did all you could. It's someone
Yeah.
else who's the issue. And you can't control other people, right?
Mm.
And that's where the anxiety comes from, because we try to apply our own control to things that are out of our control. And so that's when I start worrying about if I'm going to get promoted. That's when I'm worrying about if she's going to cheat, you know, things like
Damn.
that. And so that's where altruism really hits hard. Arguably way worse than level 1 or 2, because at least level 3 actually requires that sort of dedication, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to get out of that, especially if it's something like a relationship that's gone on for several years. And then you got to start off from the beginning, if you could find it within yourself to trust someone again, you know?
Again.
But that
Yeah.
really relates back to the internal work, because when you can internalize that you try to control something out of your control, you're going to bounce back way, way quicker, right? And that just comes to more of your perception of self. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because when she cheats, or if she leaves you, or something, maybe the spark is lost. Easy example, relationships. You're going to think of immediately, what did I do wrong?
Yeah. You're
Why
gonna start
did she
blaming
choose someone
yourself.
else? Exactly. Exactly. But you really got to remember then that even if you did the best you could, and you actually do that, it's not like, oh yeah, I told her I loved her once in a while, whatever, right? Like, let's actually do the best we can, right? Let's actually make it so that we have no real excuses for ourselves. Like, I did everything I was supposed to. I did the best I could. That's on her, right? When we realize that whatever happens to us isn't necessarily a reflection of ourselves, that has
Yeah.
exactly to do with our self-esteem and self-image, right? And that alone could get you through easily the worst of tragedies. Because if she cheats and you realize that, it's like, oh, okay, well, we encounter shitty people all the time. We know that the vast majority of people out there are shitty. She just happened to be one of them. You know, it's no reflection of us because we know we did a great job. And we just have to
Yeah.
find someone on that same wavelength. And then it all comes back to open communication and actually communicating
Yeah.
what you want to be to each other.
It's it sounds like a lot of work, but damn, it's worth it.
Well,
You know?
well, look at the fucking decline, dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right? The
and so
decline, you know?
it does take a lot of work, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, mind you, in level 3, because you're putting your trust in things that essentially could fail,
Mhm.
you don't actually need to do it. You know?
What?
And so yeah, I mean, you don't have to get married in order to live a fulfilling life. Right? Like
Ah, yeah, yeah.
there are way more facets to life that could make life beautiful, right? But the only thing that really gets us is that we've over sexualized pretty much everything. Right? And so now the general sentiment is that I need someone else to validate my existence,
Yeah.
which is usually in the form of a relationship because everything's over sexualized, and that's, typically where sex happens. Unless, of course, we're family members, you know what I'm saying?
The Sweet Home Alabama.
That is. But overall, we really got to think about what other areas of our lives that we're missing out on or that we're not maintaining because we're so fixated on something we don't have, which is maybe a business, maybe it's money, maybe it's a relationship. It could be really anything. But we just got to make sure that we're not putting all our eggs into something that could fail, right? Which is exactly what level 3 is. Like, these are good
Okay.
things in level 3, right? They build communities, right? They make people's lives better. That decline is kind of optional, but it's also without our control, right? So that's just something that we really have to maintain. Because if you don't have that drop, then sure, you can just keep going up and up, but just be careful in case you do get a drop,
Oh, so this is like gambling, right?
Not exactly.
Not
I wouldn't say
really.
that
Oh, okay.
because,
Sorry.
well, okay. No, don't apologize, really. If you have a relationship, let's say, because it's the fucking easiest. It's the easiest one to go off of. If you have a decent relationship and you're employing trust, loyalty, commitment, open communication, and you're able to articulate all your concerns effectively, they're willing to hear you out. And they should, absolutely, because if they care about the connection that you guys have, they want to be genuine. They should absolutely love you enough to be like, "Oh, okay, well, my partner has something bugging them. I should absolutely hear them out, and I would make time out of my day to help that," right? Because you're partners, right? And so you can avoid a lot of the terrible sort of situations a lot of people land themselves in through openly communicating, right? And so if you use that little script I gave before, it's like, "Oh, something's been bugging me. Could we
Yeah.
talk about it? I'd like to get your thoughts on it." And then they don't make any effort to hear you out or hear your concerns, or they're just not negotiating with you at all, then maybe they're just not the one, you know?
Yeah.
Because then maybe you should just cut your losses if they're not willing to actually be there for you. Because then that doesn't sound like commitment to me. That doesn't sound like trust to me. Certainly not loyalty. If they
Yeah.
don't care about what's bugging you with respect to the actual relationship itself, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy. You should be able to have those difficult conversations Otherwise, you just have a friend. Like, like not even that, an acquaintance. You know?
Yeah.
It's just shared experiences. Yeah.
And so if they don't do that for you, you should, if you're in a relationship like that, obviously you don't have to tell me, of course. But but if you are in a relationship like that, that could certainly be fixed with open communication, right? Because when you are able to articulate what you actually want to be to each other and really get a solid foundational understanding of where you both are and you get on that same page, then that's really it. That's where the connection is. Because then
Yeah.
you're able to build up from there, right? Because then you're able to set expectations. Then you know they can have that difficult conversation with you. And those should be absolutely essential values to bring towards any sort of meaningful relationship. Not your boss, who gives a fuck, but your close friends, the family members that you do like, and certainly your partner. The partner one is actually not negotiable. Like, imagine, right? But that's why the divorce rate's so high, because no one is really going about it in a decent and healthy way. Like, go on any sort of relationship-based forum. Like, ooh, I have this problem. How do I fix it? How do I bring it up? You fucking talk to them. What do you mean? What, like, what are you, retarded? Like, just talk to them. Just give them the same sentiments you're giving the stupid forum that you're asking strangers for help with. If they hear you out, if they actually love you, they will hear you out and they will try to be understanding and they will try to be accommodating. And you'll at
Instead
least
of asking
have
Reddit.
exactly. You'll at least have this middle ground where you could both come to the table and be like, we should talk about this because it's important to us. You know, and if it's something important to you, it should by default be important to them. Especially if it impacts the relationship. I'm not talking about like hobbies and stupid stuff like that.
The actual relationship, yeah.
Exactly. Things that actually involve and impact your connection with them. And if they can't have that difficult conversation, if they're not even willing to show up for you, my guy, it's not looking good.
It's time.
Yeah, dead ass. And then you just have to find someone who you can have a difficult conversation with.
All right. It's
I mean,
kind of hard though, but
100% it is. But that's also luckily why it's not absolutely mandatory for happiness.
Yeah.
Right? Because think about it like this. If relationships were the main form of happiness in life, then everyone in one would automatically be like among the happiest people around. Look at our divorce rates now. Look at broken families. Look at perhaps even your own relationships. Like, are you happy in them? I hope so. I hope you're communicating just like I'm communicating all these things to you right now. But you know, the chances are like kind of low. Because no one really knows about these sorts of things, or not enough people actually give it any thought. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's when we actually adopt these sorts of practices that we make way better connections. Sure, fewer connections because less people are actually willing to go through this process. But these are the ride or dies that you can make using these things. Absolutely. And it makes your life so much more meaningful, so much more beautiful. And it's absolutely worth it. Because the people who aren't willing to have those conversations or who aren't going to be there for you, they're not worth your time. Straight up.
Yeah.
You have to commit. If I commit, you commit.
Absolutely. And that has to be communicated on both ends. Because relationships are a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Damn.
Okay, this is an old one, but it's the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. If I'm just sending you all this love and I'm not getting anything in return, right?
Yeah. Fucking sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, then our country's going to shit. It's not
Exactly.
happening.
That's
Yeah, we ain't
yeah.
tolerant of that.
Is it? Do you think it's helpful if I lay it out in the first days of the relationship?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Honestly, on the first date, like a lot of people they try and they don't even touch anything like remotely controversial, right?
Oh yeah.
Mm.
I think
They
that
play
is
it
the
safe.
fuck that. I think that is
Yeah.
the opportune time to actually get to know them. Because why would I want to waste any time with you 3, 4, 5 months down the line, not really knowing who you are or what you actually want in a relationship?
Yeah.
Like you need to
Take.
set these things out. Like you need to make your intent very, very clear and articulate your thoughts effectively.
Yeah.
It's like,
Instead
what
of
do you want in the relationship? What are your goals? Do you want kids or not? Like, think long term. It's like, what do you actually want to be to someone? And then you
yeah.
see if they're able to do that trust, loyalty, commitment, open communication. I mean, it's certainly hard to gauge all those 4 things, but open communication is going to be very, very easy, even in the beginning,
Mm.
because they should at least be willing to have that kind of conversation with you, right? If they're not,
Right.
then they're gone.
Next.
Then that's a really easy, good indicator. Then just like, okay, well, I had a great time. I just don't really feel as if we connect enough. Good luck at that.
Yeah. This
Mm.
business deal is not gonna work out. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Exactly.
Then you're gonna do the Donald Trump face.
And
You're
then
fired.
tell exactly, exactly. You're gonna fire him on the spot.
All right. That's a good. It's actually a good point. I'm gonna take that
Yeah.
down. Is it okay if
You take notes?
be blunt? No, 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 no. I
I
mean,
mean,
still with the level 3, being blunt. Does that help in
in terms of
altruism?
being blunt, you altruism really isn't about being blunt or communicating any one particular way.
Oh
It's
yeah.
more about how you are actually getting your source of happiness, right? Like the
Oh okay.
whole point is that we don't want to put all our little happiness eggs into something that could fail. And that means a relationship. That means a business. That
Yeah.
means, whatever endeavor maybe we're trying to help people. Like these are all
Mm.
good things to have in your life, but they shouldn't be the focus of it. Right? Like especially relationships. They should be complementing an already meaningful life. They shouldn't be the focus of it. Because now we're putting all our happiness into something that could fail, right? And that's
Oh yeah.
also something out of our control. And that's very,
Damn.
very dangerous.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah. Why would? Damn. I'm really just really what do you call that? I'm
Mind
really
blown?
stunned by mind blown by all this. Like I've made decisions, shaped my decisions to be. I've done the opposite. I've put all my eggs into something that could fail, and then it fails, and then now I'm fucked. I've
Yeah,
done that a lot. That's why I'm
absolutely.
reacting like
No,
this.
I mean, it happens to everyone. Like it's not really something to be ashamed of because it's just part of us learning these things. And usually, I mean, people don't even get to know all these different things and actually think about it in this way. They never really take
Mm.
that step back because then they just start looking for the next thing. At least we actually know the name of the game now,
Yeah,
you know?
now I see. Okay, there are levels like that.
Exactly, exactly,
Actually,
and
good.
and that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy things. That doesn't mean you can't tell a funny story to your friends, and that doesn't mean you can't have relationships or businesses or anything, right? You could be in all
Yeah,
3
Mm.
levels or all 4 levels at once. It's just a matter of where you're putting all your eggs.
all your eggs. Yeah,
That's it. That's it. And so that really comes
that's
down to knowing what's actually important. And that's what brings us to level 4, which is the desire of perfection. And so with level
yes,
4, we acknowledge that, well, really, this one brings in philosophy. And so with philosophy, it's really, really great because then we start to answer life's big questions. And one of the biggest ones that I really like to hone in on in particular is the existence of God, right? Like if it exists or not. God as a concept. We don't have to use religion for this. We don't have to really touch on anything incendiary. We're thinking of God as a concept and
All
seeing
right.
if it's a viable one. And so I'm not really going to get into the different reasons as to why there isn't a God. But one thing that I would like to leave you with is something called Pascal's wager. Maybe you've heard about it before, maybe not, but it's essentially a non-religious sort of, I guess, situational moral question
Mhm.
that gives us 4 potential outcomes of our lives if God exists or he doesn't, right? So let's assume that God does exist, for example, for this little thought experiment.
Okay.
And so we live well because in this one we're theists. We believe in something. We believe in God and we live by this little moral code, whichever one we choose. That means usually living well, we help people, etc. All the things involved in that. We live a meaningful life because we actually think that we're on the right path. If God exists and when we die, we go to heaven, right? Great.
Yeah.
So that's one outcome. If God exists and we don't do any of those, we default to levels 1 and 2 because we think, oh, I'm not going to do all those stupid rules that religion prescribes. I'm just going to do whatever I want. So that means I'm going to go down hedonism, instant gratification. I'm going to want power, ego gratification, right? Because those are the two things that we default to without any sort of direction. Then, if God exists and we die, chances are we didn't really look out for anyone else. We didn't really care about improving anyone else's lives besides our own. And so, naturally, hopefully not, but we'd go to hell, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
for if God doesn't exist and we live well, we live arguably for others as well as ourselves. We live decently or meaningfully, anyways. And usually that also comes with peace and death because we expect something great on the other side, right?
Yeah.
If we live that kind of lifestyle, even if God doesn't exist, that's it. Nothing really happens. Like the worst case scenario is that we live a meaningful life and we have improved the lives of others, which is something that even atheists try and do, right?
Oh.
So then
Yeah.
we have this great meaningful life that's decent, and that's it. We die, curtains drawn, but no
Done.
God, so nothing happens. So we just live well, and that's it. And then on the flip side, we can be greedy, we can be materialistic, we can do whatever we want. We just max out levels 1 and 2, everything we want to do, which I mean, mind you, usually lands us in depressive states because of like the declining nature of levels 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And there also comes with a certain degree of nihilism that comes with that because, especially when you think of, ooh, I did everything right and here I am still on this cycle. Is this all there is to life? Right? That's also referred to as the hedonic treadmill because it just keeps going and going. If we live like that, seeing life as practically meaningless or depressive and we die, then that's it. But we just live kind of a subpar experience, you know? The story ends there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so really the only thing that I'd like you guys to take away with respect to the existence of God is that even if you have no religious affiliation, because granted, we didn't really get to that. I didn't really know you all that well. There's still an incentive towards belief, right? Even if it's all
There is.
bullshit, you would still live a meaningful life, provided that you do it well and you actually internalize these decent values. Right? Because at least you think you're on the right track, even if it's all fake, right? That doesn't
Yeah.
matter because you think you're doing good. And you think there's something on the other side, and that will give you hope. That will give you a decent approach to suffering.
Wow, that is so. That
Yeah,
is so nice. You
it's
know.
crazy. So even if it's all bullshit, we still come out on top.
Yeah. You know. Hope. It comes down to that.
That's all it is.
Really?
That's all it is. And then, oh my gosh, especially I love the intersection between the internal work and philosophy, because then the internal work, it sort of gives us that emotional regulation. Like we could become emotionally strong, we could be more emotionally available, we know how to communicate more
Yeah.
effectively. We,
Mm.
by extension, also become, or rather improve our mental well-being, because then we're not able to, or we are able to overcome all the intrusive thoughts that we get. Like, oh, did that relationship fail because of me? Right? Am I going to get fired? Is because someone else did something bad to me, what does that say about me? When you're able to do the internal work and see things for what they are, it's a really, really big shift between our perception of things and reality, right? And that's what gets us essentially through being mistreated in any way. Because then we become invincible when we realize that something I couldn't control blew up in my face. That is not my problem. Well, it is, but it's not your fault.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's all you could say at the end of the day. If it does blow up in your face, GG.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
maybe even fuck them.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
if
not
if they
bad.
end up being shitty people, hey,
Fuck
you know,
them.
it's not any reflection of who you are, and that shouldn't degrade your self-worth in any way. But that really comes down to our perceptions of self and being able to actually recognize the difference between our perceptions and reality. And that's also situational, right? It's like, let's say uh, your girl doesn't text you back as quick as you hoped, right? Like the immediate, easy example, because relationships are just so easy and they're so prevalent because everyone like talks about them.
Yeah.
The immediate thought is that she might be cheating on me, you know, or something stupid like that, you know. But even if they give no indication that that could be the case, that's immediately what we default to. We immediately
Yeah.
think of the worst case scenario, right? And so it's really about trying to have that distinction between what we're actually thinking randomly and what's actually happening. Because then that gives us the ability to just even step away and be like, oh, okay, well, they've done nothing in the past that sort of suggests they'd do that to me. They don't really seem like the type to do me dirty like that, you know? They
Yeah.
should be able to just talk to you about things, especially now you can employ all your little communication skills now. Wonderful. But it really, really comes down to being emotionally aware and your mental well-being being greatly improved because of that. And so when you
Yeah.
have the internal work, you're able to basically maintain yourself through any situation. But when you bring
Yeah.
in philosophy and meaning and an approach to suffering, that mix of the two gives you an insanely coherent way to approach life. And then you're practically invincible.
Emotionally setting yourself for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually good.
And you'd be
Yeah.
able to handle anything because you know that even if you did all you could, it's not a reflection of you. Right? Even if it hurts. Right? And okay,
Yeah.
this is not to say that you're invincible. I did say I did use that word, but not in the sense that you can't get hurt. But it's that
Oh
you
yeah.
could bounce back from anything. And you could do that effectively. Because people could just never trust a woman ever again, for example. I mean, reasonable with how much they were hurt. But is it actually the case that they can't? Right? Because then you can also apply that sort of perception versus reality thing to being like, oh, okay, well, I got cheated on. This one's going to do the same, you know, when these are
Yeah.
really, really different people, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something that I even fell into for quite a while. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get destroyed. They're going to just drain my bank account or something, you know, something like that. And then, especially on things like TikTok or Instagram, you see all these stupid influencers sort of like Fresh and Fit, for example. I don't know if you've heard about
Yeah.
them. They're big in the West. Or guys going up to girls in Miami, asking them what their preference in guys are, and then or studies from Tinder users, right?
Oh, I think I've seen those.
Exactly. And so you'll have a lot of these guys make vast generalizations because that's all they see online, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
oh shit.
Mm.
Like I'm not 6 feet tall. I don't make six figs. I don't have a 6 inch, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then you start to get really insecure, and then you really start to think about, oh, okay, well, if that's all there is, then I'm screwed. And that builds a lot of resentment, right? But it really comes down to our perception versus reality, right? Because
Mm.
are these influencers actually getting anyone decent for this? Chances are they're
Yeah.
all going to be a certain kind of
Mm.
person, right? Like look at the people that they bring on into Fresh and Fit, right? They're
They don't
they're
really
like Miami strippers. You want a Miami
exactly.
stripper? You know? One analogy that I made that I'm actually really proud of is
Yeah.
let's say let's say I wanted to move to the Philippines, for
Mm.
example, in this thought experiment. And we're in a conversation about it. And I go, "Oh, Kyle, I I can't go to the Philippines. Have you heard what's happening in Sweden? They have no-go zones. Like cops and ambulances can't even enter. They have curfews at night so that women don't get raped. It's too wild over there in Sweden.
Yeah.
Like I could never move to the Philippines now. Do you realize how dumb that is? Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm just using the situation in Sweden to justify my
Not
fear of whatever will happen in the Philippines. Like these the people that they bring on aren't even relevant to you if you're actually looking for something decent,
yeah.
right? So if you are looking for a decent person, why would you care about the show bringing on Miami strippers? They're what are they to us? Fucking nothing. You wouldn't even breathe in their direction. You might catch
Oh,
something, you know?
yeah.
Exactly. And so it's really about these vast generalizations and the internal work necessary to actually recognize that and to be able to stop yourself. And so
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to because then you get clarity on pretty much everything. And that makes your life way, way easier.
Mm. Yeah.
Just really knowing what you want.
Exactly. And then seeing if it's actually out there, but then that really just comes down to talking to people. But then
Yeah.
you can also use that little communication bit and see if they're willing to have that hard conversation. And if they are, then maybe they're worth your time. But if they're not, hey, move on. That's okay.
GG.
It's not a reflection of you. There are lots of shitty people in the world. You just happen to come across one. Who cares?
Oh,
Get back out
still a
there.
lot of people. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
Just
true.
thug it out.
Mm.
I mean, if that's even what you want to do, you could still live very meaningfully on your own. I mean, mind you,
Yeah.
that's like a whole episode on its own. Oh my god. That's really wild stuff. I really love that one actually. I'm really passionate about that particular area. Just to be self-sufficient. Oh my god. Crazy. Crazy.
Yeah. Put me on there when you do it. Oh, I want to be in it.
Sure. Not a problem. And so one thing there was also another one. I'm blanking right now. It's terrible.
It's okay.
Wait. Yeah. So it's pretty much symptoms of a poor sense of self, which is how we actually get down in the dumps without the internal
Mm.
work. And so the internal work, when we have that emotional availability, or it's also referred to as an emotional quotient. Like, are you able to regulate yourself emotionally? How's your emotional well-being? How's your mental well-being, etc. And then when you have the direction that philosophy can give you, that'll be how you live the most meaningful life you possibly can, right? And so you live with maybe greatly reduced anxiety because you know how to then deal with everything that's important to you, or maybe depending on your state in life, no anxiety at all. And everything then becomes really, really beautiful. And at the very least, more meaningful. And then if you incorporate the philosophy, one of the other benefits is that you're actually given a lens through which you could see the world. And so if we don't have that, if we don't have like anything rooting us down to like a particular, set of values or tenets or whatever that we could logically verify, then we're just going to go along with whatever's current at the time, right? And then our version of happiness is just going to switch from month to month, and that'll suck because then we're in a new cycle.
Mm.
And so it really comes down to getting clarity and then getting that foundation. And that's exactly what the internal work and philosophy is able to do for you.
Philosophy.
Mhm.
I'm taking it down. I'm sorry.
Don't be, but just be careful with philosophy. Like the stuff I'll be teaching in particularly, it's not going to be about, "Ooh, Plato said this," and we could just talk.
Try it
Machiavelli
out.
did this, because then you get into other philosophers who are justifying ego gratification or instant gratification. Like Machiavelli's book, The Prince, is how to be
Mm.
feared and how to get to the top using fear instead of being loved, right? Like that's just straight level 2. Like that is not a very good way to go about it. Do not read The
Yeah.
Prince. Or I mean, absolutely do read The Prince, but be aware of what it's doing to you.
Yeah. Oh, so it's okay to follow the words of the philosophers, but you really have to think about how you apply them to your daily life, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so you're not necessarily following at them at that point, but I would say filter them
Yeah,
and make
filter.
sure that they are tenets that you could actually live by and be like, okay, well, yeah, that won't ruin my life. That seems pretty good. you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That seems pretty nice. And so overall, that's really it. And then from the philosophy, then you're able to choose a religion. Then you're also able to find an approach to suffering. And then when you can have the internal work where you realize that not everything applies to you, and you have maybe that direction, let's say, from God, for example. If God
Mm.
is so intimately connected into our lives, if
Hmm.
God is actually all knowing, that means he knows exactly what you're going through. If you ask him for help, he has heard you, right? And so it really comes down to then, usually in religions, it's very, very common to have a trust in God, right? And so
Yeah.
because there's no time in God, because he's outside of time and space, because he was there before everything existed, that means we can't follow any sort of timeline or expect anything to happen when we want it to, right? And that's just part of trusting God. That's why it's difficult, right?
Oh,
The major problem with religion is that it's only ever taught how to worship, not necessarily why. Because
Mm.
how?
yeah, exactly. Exactly, because you'll be brought to church. You won't be told why you're there, just to go, You'll be woken up
Yeah.
for it Sunday morning, or you'll be
Yeah.
told to pray, you'll be told to recite this script, and everything will be fine. You won't know why, and you won't trust it either, because bad things could still happen to you even if you believe in God.
Yeah.
But that's a problem with poor education. And that's honestly, if that applies to you, it's no fault of your own. And chances
Yeah.
are, the people who did force that on you weren't even taught themselves.
Yeah.
And then even the people who forced it on them, could they even articulate these ideas enough? Like, were they profound enough? Were they reflective enough to actually consider these things and communicate them effectively? Probably not. And that's the problem.
Mm.
It's all in poor education.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here.
Misinformed. Oh, hell yeah. Our Lord and Savior, Noah, has come to inform us.
Exactly.
This
So,
is actually making a lot of sense
thank
because
you.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
If you're just blindly following all these guidelines, the religion, the philosophers,
That
you're
won't do
gonna
any good
mess
for you.
yourself up.
Oh, absolutely, and
Exactly.
that would be a great way for you to actually hate God, or at least the
Right?
concept of God, right? And then you just lose, like, one half of your support. Even if you've mastered internal work, you have no real way to approach suffering in a meaningful way and have it work for you, right? Because then it's just resentment stored up. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I know it's no reflection of me, but it still happened. And then that just breeds
Mm.
hatred. With the
Right?
religion, with the philosophy, with that foundational knowledge and all the implications that come with it, then you're able to make sense of suffering and have it be meaningful. And so
Exactly.
you need both, the internal work and the philosophy. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just like when I was in high school, I used to be how everyone is interested in atheism.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. For sure.
That that's
It's the
how I
cool thing
became
to
an
do.
atheist. Yeah. Atheism was cool in high school, and then I
Mhm.
just happened
That's
to
cool.
I took it up. So
Yeah,
I
I believe it.
considered myself to be an atheist. But then the
Mm.
type of atheist I was the type of, I hate God, blah blah blah. He's not doing anything for me. The doubtful and the hateful atheist. I was
Mhm.
that kind. And then I realized I was the kind of atheist that doesn't know any philosophy. Like
Yeah,
an atheist that doesn't know himself. And
absolutely.
then I
And that's
and
the
then
vast majority of atheists. Because
exactly
they
I
just feel like the main justification will just be like, "Oh my god, these kids got cancer." Or some
why
shit. It's
why would
like,
why would
if
God
God's
let that
real,
happen?
why did I get into a car accident? You know?
Right?
Or
I
some
was
Mm.
stupid
like
shit like
that.
that. It's like, uh,
They would just blame everything on.
exactly, exactly, but bad things could still happen to you, but okay, this is, like, way, way, way later, but the whole point of suffering is that if you believe that God is very, very intimately connected into your life, is it's for you to rely on God,
Yeah.
right? And so it's to build that connection and to build that rapport, right? That's essentially it, because the whole objective of religion is to model yourself after what you're worshiping,
Mm.
right? So
Exactly.
for Catholicism, your goal is to be more Christ-like. And that also
Mm.
comes with the 10 commandments, with serving others, etc. And that also comes with loving yourself, because that's
Mm.
also one thing that's very, very sorely, or rather, it's dismissed a lot. That whenever people think of needing to do something for religion, they think that they need to be doormats for other people. That is absolutely not the case, right? And so
Mm.
when Christians say love your neighbor as you love yourself, that also implies that you have to love yourself, and that means
Oh,
actually doing what's best for you and not being a doormat. Because if you can't even help yourself, if you are just out of the game because you've been hurt so badly, or you're just burnt out from helping others and just using up all your resources and you're done,
Mm.
then who can you help afterwards? You need to love yourself.
exactly. I
And
never
then
I
philosophy
never
also tells you what love is, you know? And so it's
Yeah.
really, really crazy. It's not just wanting to fuck, believe it or not. And so it's it's way, way bigger than anything you ever really think of, because no one ever really thinks of these sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's absolutely difficult. It's really, really heartbreaking. I completely agree with you.
It sucks, that you have to learn this from an outside perspective. It's it's
Yeah,
very
you're
hard
not
to
gonna get it
think
on your
about.
own.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
hard.
Absolutely. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, this is where you come in. This is
Exactly. That's why I
why
wanna
you're
teach it,
important.
because it's honestly just changed my life. It's thank you, thank you. I mean, my ever since doing internal work, it's or starting it, and then that also led me to more philosophical concepts with religion. right? It's given me such a great deal of joy and meaning. And
Mm.
I live with a way, way better perception of self. I'm way more emotionally available. Like my emotional well being is skyrocketed. By consequence, my mental well being has skyrocketed. And then when I realize what you want because of the internal work, then also chances are you're going to work on yourself. And so my physicality has also skyrocketed, right? I'm taking better care of myself because I know that I'm not as terrible as I once thought I was, right? Because then it comes down to
Yeah.
the perception versus reality, right? So maybe you're not as bad as you think if you have a negative view of the self, right? But it really
Yeah.
all comes down to shifting your own perspectives. Because if all you see are negative things,
Oh, what?
he dropped. That's
He
okay.
get
That's okay.
disconnected.
That's okay. Not a problem. He can always come back. The recording will
Yeah.
just pick up right where I left off. Not a problem. We'll just wait. We'll just wait a bit. It's fine.
Yeah, sorry if I'm not talking too much. I'm just taking it all in, you know.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, people. It really, really varies. Whenever I talk to people about this, like some people are really, really
Mm.
engaged. Others are just like, "Wow, I never thought
Yeah.
of it that way." I just hope that it's actually enough for you guys to derive any benefit because that's really the
Mm.
whole point.
Yeah. Actually, most of these stuffs I'm currently experiencing, you know, with the 4 levels of gratification.
Hmm.
I'm currently experiencing this with a friend, actually right now. But, you know, I think I'm mostly aware of everything that's going on, so it's not bugging me so much. Not not like it used to before.
Right. Right. Well, that's great because at least you know what the name of the game is and what their actual
Yeah.
motivations are. Right? Like maybe
Yeah.
it's not actually as bad as you anticipated too. Right? Like
Mm.
having a
Yeah.
better understanding of this is also sorry, he's in the waiting room. Sorry about that. Sorry for the wait. I didn't
So
realize you were there. I had something over my Discord.
Oh, what happened?
when when the
No, that's
shut
okay.
down
That's
out of
okay.
the blue.
Not a problem.
Sorry.
Don't be,
Anyways,
don't be, don't
yeah.
be. It happens. And so basically, uh sorry, Brett, did you want to keep going with your thing as Kyle was gone?
Yeah, sure. I'll just tell the whole story. So,
Sure, sure.
so I have this friend in college, and I think he's pretty much always on level 2. You know, he's always
Right.
on level 2, and I think me and my friends are on level 3. And what we're doing for him is we call him out on his ego gratification shit that he does all the time.
Mhm.
And I think he constantly does that because even when we had this like major thing that happened to our in our circle when one of our friends died, he,
Sorry to hear that.
he used that opportunity to, you know, one up all of us. Yes, when when the news of our friend died, what he did was he posted on Facebook that it is like, you know, it is telling the whole world like he is the only he's like the only solid friend that our friend who passed away had, because you know he was always there for him. He kept saying all that shit. So yeah, and we're like, no one needs to hear that. Like it's not even the real case that's going on. So we called him out on that and everything, and eventually things became okay. Then a few years later, like things would go up and down. So I think it's with level 3. And right now, I think he's on the level 2 path again because he kept like So he had this what do you call this? He had this up in life wherein he's doing good. He bought a car and other stuff, and now what he's doing is one upping everyone again. Like reason is like sharing stuff that which implies that you don't have these kinds of stuff because you don't work hard. Like
Hmm.
it just
Right.
invalidates everyone's
Yeah,
situations
lived
and
experience. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So when I saw that, I'm like, fuck that. Uh, I just didn't care pretty much anymore.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where he's gonna start to decline.
Yeah,
Because you guys are leaving him. Yeah, I mean,
we didn't even bother talking about it because he's always like that. So let's leave him be.
exactly, exactly. Well,
So yeah,
if you actually
that's
wanted him back, then you could always
mm, mm,
just talk to him about that. Just be like, that
mm,
that really doesn't sit well with any of us because it just doesn't really imply that you actually value us for who we are. It's
yeah,
more than that.
exactly.
And then when you bring in, it's like, okay, well, you have a car, but if you have no one around you, you're just gonna sit in it alone.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
Mm,
Who's
And
gonna
so
ride with it?
exactly, exactly. And so it really comes down to his own journey with that sort of thing, right? And just
mm,
that's sadly the pipeline that we usually go down when we default to levels 1 and 2 because then we want the materials and then we want to show it off, right?
yeah.
Like essentially he's just a low grade kind of rapper at that point, right? With the fake hundreds or the gold chain or the whores that he bought for the photo shoot or something like
Mm,
that.
yeah. Even when you have the difficult conversations with him, he just relapses back to just having that ego to keep one upping everyone.
I mean, if he's not able to have those difficult conversations and he's not willing to hear you out,
Mm,
obviously it's to your discretion, but that isn't a good look to me. That would
yeah.
certainly
Okay.
be grounds for termination. You fire him. You know?
Yeah,
Do
obviously,
the
yeah.
face and the voice.
Yeah,
You're fired.
exactly.
Yeah, it just comes down to your self-awareness that, that's don't have to waste your energy on that shit.
Mhm. And so we talked a bit about or sorry, were you finished with that thought?
Yeah, yeah. I'm all good.
Yeah,
Just
you're good too,
sharing
Kyle?
that out.
Yeah, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. If communication doesn't work, yeah, that's a difficult case.
Fire.
Sorry
Slap
to
him
hear that.
with a D.
Mhm. That eyes. And so when we have just to go back to what we had before Kyle
Yeah.
dropped off. That's okay. The philosophy really gives us a direction, right? And so that's actually where we were able to actually even know level 4 exists. Because if we have no philosophy, then we have no real reason to believe in God. Because then we're just, like we talked about already, we are thrown into religions that we have no foundation in. Because then we're just told to pray these prayers, recite these scripts, go to these rituals without any idea as to why we should do them or the attitude with which we need to approach them, right? Like there's no actual foundation there from which you could build off of. There, it just becomes a routine and then it starts to be devalued because bad things still happen to you, right? And so with
Yeah.
level 4, the desire for perfection, that degree of perfection is God. Because this relates back to an actual philosophical concept where God is outside of time and space, right? Because he was before it, because then he would have made everything, right? And so that's why we can't really confine certain events to a timeline with respect to God. It's like, oh, God, I want a job by X date, or I want her to text me by whatever time. that doesn't exactly work out, because there's no time in God. It's not a thing with him. He certainly is aware of it because he made it. He knows the timeline that
Mhm.
you want, but he has a much, much bigger scope of what's actually going on in your life.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where the desire for perfection comes from. Because then, as we acknowledge the existence of God and we very reasonably live a life in relation to that, because why would we acknowledge God's existence and then just leave it at that? It's like, oh yeah, he exists. I'm just gonna still do whatever I want. I mean, people do that. Don't get me wrong, but reasonably, yeah, I don't know. Through the wager, we know that's kind of a shitty deal,
Yeah.
right? And so, even if
Why?
God doesn't exist, we still ball out,
Oh yeah.
right? Because it really comes down to when people just sort of deny that kind of lifestyle, they see religion as that sort of slavery instead of them seeing their own vices as a form of slavery, right? And so it's like, oh no, I'm not gonna go to church. I'd rather hook up with this random bitch. Well, he's just gonna keep doing that, and that's what he's gonna default to, right?
Yeah.
And so he's just going to default to that. That's going to be his life, and that's what he's a slave to, right? At least with religion, you get a fucking choice not to do it,
Hmm.
right?
Mm.
Right? And that choice is the essence of freedom, because we have the right to choose between good or evil,
Choice. Yeah.
conceptually. And so the level 4, the desire for perfection, it's only a straight shot up because it's a never-ending journey. So we can only ever progress.
There's nothing to lose.
Exactly.
Huh?
Because if you have that belief and you're striving for something, there's no way for you to crash, because it's a lifelong journey and you only ever get to the end. You only ever get your reward when you die. So there's actually no opportunity for you to lose it.
Dang.
I mean,
Perfect.
you could still go to hell, but I mean, this is for, our lifetime,
Oh yeah. It ends when it ends. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
the real end isn't just isn't pictured, because this is just relevant to our lives.
Yeah.
And so it really is a lifelong commitment that really just gives us meaning. That's all it is. And it keeps us moving towards a particular goal, right? Usually that's heaven. Very reasonably. Because then from the philosophy, we get into religion. And then using philosophy, you're also able to determine which religion's right. We'll get into that later, maybe. I'll refer to other people who do that way, way better than I ever could.
Hmm.
But also going in on level 4 also prevents us from falling back into levels 1 or 2 as a default state.
Oh yeah.
And so really we need that foundation in order to live a solidly meaningful life. And that is why you need the internal work and philosophy, and then everything else that comes with it is just so beautiful. And honestly, it's, for example, whenever I touch on the approach to suffering, like the content with it, or even when I was making it, like the workflow for it, I cried. It's just so beautiful, and it's just so meaningful, and it's so wonderful, because it really puts everything into perspective. And once you have that approach to suffering, that's it. Then you figured it out, right? Because then that's all life is. Because once you have suffering in place, because that's the main problem that afflicts all of us, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful. And so that's, I hope to pretty much teach exactly that, how to live as meaningfully as possible. And I think that what I have now is really great for the workflow. I mean, you can get, like, each of these concepts can get their own episode, and they certainly will. But this is a wonderful introduction to each individual concept. And there is more. I mean, mind you, the other aspects of life that we touched on back when we were talking about relationships, we're like, ooh, okay, well, We only ever focus on the things that we don't have, right? But meanwhile, we could let other aspects of our life get away from us, right? I categorize those into things called the pillars of wellness. Remember how it's like
Oh
each
yeah.
pillar holds up our life satisfaction, and then on the bottom is sadness and death. And so then if we focus on, let's say, uh, not having one pillar, maybe that is um, having no passions, nothing that we're passionate about. You still have 8 others, let's say. You have everything else except a girlfriend, but you're just so fixated on the fact that you don't have a relationship, which is a very common thing in social media now, which is why I use relationships as the default example, because it's just so easy.
Mm.
Sure, you don't have the romance pillar, but you have your other 8. And why would you let your other 8 go to shit just because you don't have one? You can live such a meaningful life still. You can have your physical well-being, your social well-being, your friends, your family, your emotional well-being through internal work, your mental well-being through internal work, your spiritual well-being through philosophy and your approach to suffering, your meaningful engagements, and then your passions, the things that you love to do and that really, really get you going, right? All these things
Yeah.
don't have to go to shit, and your life doesn't have to be worthless just because you're not in a relationship, or you don't have the job you want, or you don't have as much money as you want. Right? Because let's say, which is something very, very relevant to the Philippines in particular, actually,
Mm.
a less fortunate country, by and large. A lot of the Westerners are on antidepressants at your age. A lot of them. There was a study
Damn.
back in
Really?
2018 where I think it was like, I want to say conservatively, on the lower end, 30% of undergraduate
Mm.
students in that study were on antidepressants. 30%. And that was in 2018. Imagine after the
Oh.
Rona, right? It's not looking good. Do you think they know any of this? Of course not. They're all in
They
levels 1 and
don't.
2. They're destroying their ability to have meaningful relationships, right? They're destroying their own chances at living a meaningful life because they're just pigeonholing themselves into levels 1 and 2, right? They don't even think about others in the same capacity that we just thought of, right? Like altruism
Mm.
and the desire for perfection and things like that.
Yeah.
They're going to focus on whatever is immediate and apparent, which is usually to them romance, or going to be a counterfeit of romance, which is just hookup culture. Right?
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Then we can get into body counts. I love that conversation. Holy shit. Oh, the clips from that episode, bro. I'm gonna go crazy.
Okay.
I might have to hire an editor for that one just because it'll be like too much for me. But it's gonna be very incendiary. I'm gonna say some really mean things, but it's gonna be for their benefit because you really do destroy your chance at intimacy in general when you engage in that kind of behavior, because you're devaluing yourself and others, and you
Mm.
ruin your perception of what intimacy is, and then you start to blur the lines between what's actually passionate and intimate as opposed to what's just some random guy,
Yeah.
and so that's a really, really big problem in the dating landscape. But thank God that you don't actually need a relationship in order to be happy, right? But that comes with internal work and actually internalizing all these truths,
Yeah.
Like this is overall, like you are not going to fix yourself with this one conversation. Certainly
Yeah.
not.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly
Of
not.
course.
I mean, I couldn't. I still have intrusive thoughts that come to me, and I fucking teach this to people. you know? And so it's difficult. It's difficult, especially when you do the internal work and you think that you had it, and you think, you were really had it down pat. No. No, it's a constant commitment because these things will come through to you because we're surrounded by negativity and things that oppose it. And so overall, the impacts on your life, your mental, emotional, and even spiritual well-being will be greatly improved. 100%. And, even by extension, because you'll actually want to take care of yourself, then your physical will also improve.
Yeah.
Mm.
You will live with greatly reduced anxiety, or depending on your state in life, not at all. You'll get meaning and beauty in your life again. And you'll see suffering for what it is, and you'll be able to take it in stride because of your internal work and your conceptualization of what's actually happened to you. The downside is, overall, that it does take a lot of work because it's very, very different having this conversation, being able to acknowledge it versus internalizing it. That takes
Yeah.
practice. Because for me personally, it wasn't just about acknowledging, but really whenever I actually needed to learn those things, whenever I was really, let's say, down in the dumps, and I really needed to look to something to prove my suspicions wrong, that I was the problem, for example. That I was, let's say, not worthy of X. Maybe that I did something to make my relationship fail. You know? When really that's not the case at all. Because as long as you do everything that you're within control of, which is all in here, you can't be held to account for something failing. Right? Just
Yeah.
like that business, a car could just drive through your store and
Out of your
decimate you.
control.
Exactly. And then comes our approach to suffering, which we get from philosophy and religion. And then you get a really coherent view as to how to move forward in life and how to let certain things affect you in different ways. And then that's where the invincibility is. Not in the sense that you will be impervious to everything and you will never suffer ever again, but you will have meaning behind it. You will know what that suffering is in the context of life, very generally, and you'll be able to bounce back way better.
Yeah, like really just knowing your stuff,
Exactly.
how
Exactly.
to handle yourself. That's
Mhm.
good. That's actually phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you. And remember when I told you I was making that like little journal where you actually get to go through these things and your limiting beliefs and your insecurities and your fears and the things that make you tick, your versions of the pillars of wellness, right? It's so meaningful, and it also gives you a way to actually recall all these things. So when the intrusive thoughts creep back in, when you are unsure and maybe you're thinking of reverting back to your old line of thinking, you're at least able to recall these things and actually actively work through it because you always have access to it.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful, and it really changes the course of your life. Phenomenal. It's absolutely changed mine. Because instead of thinking like, "Holy shit, I gotta fucking kill myself," you know, or something like that, even changing the script, like when you catch yourself doing that, even changing it is just so valuable, and it really changes your perception of self and your outlook on life. And that is the essence of what this whole thing is about. The internal work, the philosophy, and the implications that give you that meaning. And that's it.
You just have to. It's like having this cheat code that whenever you're facing this problem or this
Yeah.
situation, you just
Mm.
always have to remember Noah said this, and then it fixes it right up. It's
I mean,
actually good.
that's a good way to go about it, but a
Yeah.
better way that you could actually internalize these things is to actually, sure, take notes from what I'm saying, but also apply them more intimately to your own situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then when you're able to actually, let's say, get that on the paper, like without me in the picture, like it's just you and the paper and these concepts, it's very specific to you. It's very different from hearing me
Mm.
talk about it,
Yeah.
you know, because then it's just, oh yeah, now I'm listening to a podcast, as opposed to
Yeah.
me actually dealing with
Right.
the concepts itself and actually giving it my full attention, you know?
Mm.
So it's when you are suffering that you need to do that for yourself. And then you need to
Mm.
realize, and then as you actually confront these concepts, you will start to fill in the blanks and be like, no.
Mm.
And then sure, you could absolutely use me as like a guide through that, but you will find that you will also be able to flesh out way more material and maybe even think of better tidbits than the one I gave you, right? And you'll be able to give yourself a really coherent workflow that's specifically tailored to you, that you could always refer to whenever a particular problem comes back or whenever a particular thought comes back.
Mhm.
And that is how you internalize it way, way more effectively than just listening to one of my episodes 3 times in a row. As
Yeah.
great as it would be, especially on YouTube for the retention and the watch time and all that, sure. But in terms of internalizing, it's going to take you doing that confrontation multiple times
Mhm.
alone.
Yeah. Putting in the work.
Yeah, exactly. The only one who could do that work is you.
Always have to be self-aware
Yeah.
of everything.
And then to be able to acknowledge when those thoughts are coming in, phenomenal.
Mm.
Phenomenal. And that also, I mean, that's a skill to cultivate too. Because then, back to generalizations, like, oh, when you see something like on Twitter or on TikTok of, one of those stupid Miami strippers giving their opinions on dating, and then you think like, ah, fuck, all women are like that. It's like, that's certainly not the case. Right? And one thing that you can even have hit home maybe a bit more effectively is, sorry, one second,
It's all right.
is that one way that we could overcome generalizations is that we can actually apply them to ourselves, and we could see how ridiculous they are. Because let's say,
Yeah.
okay, right, all women are a horse, let's say, which is like a very general, very very common sentiment in social media by some people, or all men want sex, for example. We can also apply these things right to ourselves and into our own friend groups and see the differences between us. So let's say all guys are into feet. If you saw that, someone say that, it's like, certainly not. Certainly not.
I'm into
Yeah, exactly.
something. I'm into armpits.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. We're all different, right?
Yeah.
Or all guys like blondes. Certainly not the
Mm,
case. You go outside, especially where you guys are, there are no blondes, except
yeah,
for
there
like,
are no
maybe some
blondes.
prostitutes here and there. But in terms of facing generalizations, you can even look to your own friend groups to remember that people are fundamentally different in how they approach life. Right? So when we think of, oh, this girl's just going to cheat on me because, I heard about this happening. But you could think and look to your own friends, like, you guys don't even have the same preferences. I'm like, sure, you as brothers are into different things. You guys approach things very differently. You guys have different likes and dislikes and things like that. Right? And so you got to really at least acknowledge that people have a very, very different lived experience. And just because some person wronged you doesn't mean another one will.
Yeah.
Right? Because then we're just comparing Sweden to the Philippines. And because Sweden is
Love it.
shit, that's why I'm writing off the Philippines. And that's crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we look to TikTok and we see Miami strippers, well, why would we care about pump and dump Miami strippers anyways? That's not the kind of girls we're into. Right? So why would we use them as a template for what we want? Right? It's not even relevant to us. We wouldn't even breathe in their directions. Right?
It's not
And
what I
so
want.
when you have that clarity, oh, the game really changes. And that's
It is.
the essence of how to live a decent life.
Yeah. Even it's actually worked for me a little since the last time we spoke. Since the last time you were here,
I'm glad.
the choices that I've faced ever since, I've learned to really filter them out. The decisions I make, I started, will this affect me in long term?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've
Absolutely.
actually started applying them.
I'm really, really glad to hear that. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
so
Oh,
overall, I mean, that's exactly or these things are what we all covered in our first few talks together. Especially I think that one I think the second time I was here, it was like a 2 or 3 hour conversation when we were having all these things, right? When it was raining,
Yeah,
right? And,
Yeah.
lots of fucking cockroaches.
yeah, Tita Arvin, like, slapped one, and it was, like, right where I was sitting, and I was like, "Holy shit, if I had stayed there 5 seconds longer, I would've been dicked down by it." Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that was a solid
That was a
man.
really, really great talk, and this one also was. And so,
Yeah.
do you guys have
This one
anything
was
else?
going to the specific. This talk that we had compared to the last one, this was a lot more, you know. Well, for me it was because I'm in my game because I've just woken up
Yeah.
and then I'm getting all this information and it's all clear to me.
Yeah, and we're not drinking.
Yeah, we're
You
all
know,
Exactly.
that
sober.
helps. That helps as well.
Really a lot.
For
So
sure, for
I've been
sure.
recalling all the pieces, I've been recalling all the parts, and then I was wondering why didn't I remember this part? And then now I remember,
Yeah, yeah, because we were too
and
fucked up.
it's affecting me. It's affecting me a lot better now. Like with hope,
Yeah.
it's giving me hope. Like, yeah, damn, I could really use this
Yeah,
to
no, it's
as a springboard. Yeah.
absolutely. And when I figured it out, honestly, one of the things when I was first in the Philippines and then later I left to go to Japan, right? And so
Mm.
sometimes in the cruise, I didn't really want to pay like $170 for the Wi-Fi. And so sometimes I would just be doing my own like little journal thing,
Mm,
like doing my own insecurities and limiting beliefs and things like that. And honestly, the amount of development that you're able to do when you actually lay out everything that bugs you, I cried on on the ship because then you were able to
On the ship.
rationalize everything. Yeah, I mean, thank God I chose like a nice little spot. You know, it was next to the window. I chose a cute spot in the lounge. It was really secluded, really, really great. And so, yeah, it was a great place to cry for that. But
mm,
yeah, it's so meaningful, and the impact of your life is so immediate because these things are always at the forefront of your minds, right? Because
Yeah.
these are the limiting core beliefs that you hold that certainly, in most cases, may not even be true, right? Chances are we adopted them from some sort of event that happened in our lives. We acquired them and then we never really gave them up, even though times have changed and we've had a lot of development since then. But we just haven't gone through the process of actually getting rid of those limiting core beliefs that give us a negative sense of self. Right.
Oh.
And that's exactly what happened. And then when you're able to free yourself of that, just be alone when it happens because chances are
All
you're going
right.
to be crying if you do it
Yeah,
right.
I felt
Anyways,
prepared.
I, I mean, for a lot of the times when I was doing the journaling thing, there were times when I would cry every time because you just make so much progress and it would be so enlightening and it would just be so meaningful because it's so
mm.
specific to your experience. Phenomenal. Phenomenal to do that internal work. Yeah. Crazy. Crazy. And then even making the I guess the content for this, approaching suffering and actually having to make a solid workflow for other people to follow. Oh my god. Phenomenal. Because then you're able to just have everything laid out so coherently and it really, really changes the game. And so even
Mm.
if
It
you
really
think that
does.
you can't, quote unquote, fix yourself, that's absolutely not the
Yeah.
case.
You can fix
Uh,
others. That's actually good.
well, you need to fix yourself before
So,
you can fix others, right?
oh yeah, actually, yeah, as you've said, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, not a problem. That's one thing that a lot of people try to do. It's just and then they burn themselves out. And that's
Yeah.
really,
Mm,
really sad. And so another religious concept that actually plays into this is that a lot of people they try to do good for others, right? And then they get burnt out, they exhaust all the resources, etc. When really uh they use this as a sort of justification where it's like, oh, okay, well, God told me to do this, and so I'm going to
yeah,
give benefit to others instead of
Yeah.
yeah.
myself, right? Instead of a straw where you could pour water and then you're the straw and then it goes to other people, You should actually be a bowl. You should be an
Bull.
overflowing bowl. Because if you have no grace, then how can you actually properly dispense it to other people? And
Exactly.
because we need to love our neighbors as ourselves, we also
You
need
have to
grace
love
for ourselves.
yourself.
And so we can't
Yeah.
be straws. We need to be bowls. And we need our
Overflowing bowls.
own self-care. We need our own internal work. And we need to care for ourselves so that we can actually care for others. So it all starts with us. And that's a beautiful journey to go down.
Yeah. The saying makes sense. Love others as you love yourself.
And that means you need to work for
On yourself.
exactly. And you need to want what's best for you.
Damn.
And that's what love is. It's willing the good of another. It's not wanting to fuck. It's not getting along with them. Because you can like someone and not love them. But you can also love someone and not like them.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Absolutely you can. Because
Yeah.
love is, very generally, it's essentially willing the good for another. That's essentially what it comes down to. There are 4 parts to it. We don't need to get into it. But that's essentially what it comes down to. It's just willing the best. Like, I want what's best for you, even if I don't know them. Right?
Yeah.
One
Damn.
really easy example is like, let's say you see a homeless person or someone going through a hard time, and you're like, wow, I really hope things work out for them. You are, obviously not doing anything, but you are loving them as a concept, right? Like, you are willing the best for them. And that's the real stepping stone that we need to adopt. And that's what Christians are called to do, essentially.
Christians. Damn. Well,
Yeah, it's a lot. I know. It's crazy.
yeah.
Absurd.
It's really
Like,
just hitting me right now.
No, I laid out life for you. It's difficult. That's a lot. You know how long it took me to fucking make that? Years.
How long?
Years.
Damn.
Because it started off when I took that class, and then you were able to apply everything, and then when you have the philosophy and you have all the direction, then that also gives you a sense of morality, right? And so then you're able to actually apply this to how you vote, for example. Like, it really penetrates every facet of your life,
Yeah.
because then you get clarity on everything. And so obviously, one of the more difficult parts with doing the internal work and with doing all the philosophy and actually getting clarity is having to deal with the people who don't believe you and who want to stay on level 1 and 2 because they think you're full of shit.
Yeah.
But then you also have a moral imperative to help them. And it just makes it very, very difficult sometimes. But, I mean, mind you, that really comes down to your approach to it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of content, it's quite the journey. So we'll see.
We shall see.
Yeah.
Really can't help others without helping yourself first.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Damn. You know that Danny DeVito meme where he was crying and then he's saying, "Oh my God, I get it." Yeah, that just happened to me right now.
No, it's a wonderful thing to have happen. I'm really glad I could do that for you. If what we covered today resonates with you and you want to learn more about these kinds of topics that make for a happy and meaningful life, be sure to subscribe. I'm starting this show to help people figure out how to live meaningfully and happily, and hopefully you got some value out of this episode. Enough for you to tag along on the journey of personal growth with me and everyone else listening. Thank you once again to Red and Kyle for joining me and being fantastic guests. I loved having you, and thank you for listening. I hope to see you in session 1, and have a good night.